The story begins in the Roman Empire at the height of its power, stretching all the way from Africa to the northern borders of England. It is the year 180 AD, and Emperor Marcus Aurelius's 12-year campaign against the barbarian tribes of Germania is nearing its end, with only one final battle remaining. Maximus, the general of the Roman army, gazes at the sky while thinking about his home. As he walks through the ranks, the soldiers greet him with respect, while the emperor watches everything from above. Once he reaches the front lines, he asks Quintus, one of his officers, whether the messenger sent to negotiate with the barbarians has returned. Quintus tells him that the man has been gone for nearly 2 hours. While they are speaking, a horse suddenly appears carrying the lifeless body of the messenger. Right behind it comes the barbarian leader, who throws the man's severed head toward the Roman army while shouting battle cries. As the barbarians emerge from the forest and prepare for combat, Maximus orders the men at the front to wait for his signal. He then rides through the army, encouraging his soldiers and reminding them that the war is almost over and that they will all soon be returning home.
You find yourself alone. What we do in life?
Before long, the battle begins, and the Romans unleash their catapults and arrows upon the enemy. Even after being thrown off his horse during the fighting, Maximus continues to overpower his enemies, and eventually, the barbarians are defeated. Meanwhile, Aurelius's children, Commodus and Lucilla, are making their way to the army camp with their guards. Commodus wonders whether their father is truly dying, believing that he would never have summoned his children and the senators unless the situation was serious. Lucilla suggests that perhaps their father simply misses them. Completely convinced of his future, Commodus says that his father is finally about to name him emperor, and that to celebrate the occasion, his first order will be to organize games. After reaching the camp, Commodus asks where his father is, and learns that he has been at the front for the last 19 days. Hearing this, Commodus immediately takes a horse and rides off to meet him. Back at the front, Marcus Aurelius tells Maximus that he has proven himself once again and asks what reward should be given to Rome's greatest general after another victory. Maximus answers that the only thing he desires is permission to return home.
How can I reward Rome's greatest general?
Let me go home.
Aurelius then brings him before the army, and the soldiers begin cheering loudly in his honor. Around this time, Commodus arrives and notices everyone celebrating Maximus while he and Aurelius walk together. Commodus quickly approaches his father, asking whether the war has ended and congratulating him on the victory. Aurelius, however, tells him that the praise belongs to Maximus because the victory is his achievement. Commodus turns to Maximus, congratulates him, and even calls him his brother. He then asks his father to walk with him as well, but Aurelius says that he is tired and rides away. His father's cold response leaves Commodus feeling somewhat jealous. As night falls, Maximus visits the wounded soldiers who have suffered in battle. Afterwards, he returns to the camp and tells his officers that he plans to go home and spend the rest of his life working as a farmer. While they are talking, Commodus arrives and introduces him to Senators Gaius and Falco, both of whom believe that Rome should once again become a republic, just as it was when it was founded. When they ask Maximus what he thinks, he simply says that he is only a soldier.
Well, why not? Rome was founded as a republic.
The advantage of being able to look his enemy in the eye.
Commodus then warns him that politicians should never be trusted, and says that when he becomes emperor, he will need someone like Maximus because he knows how to win wars. Maximus replies that all he wants is to go home. Commodus agrees that he has earned that right, but says that he will soon call him back. Before leaving, he mentions that Lucilla is here as well, and adds that she has not forgotten him. Elsewhere, Lucilla quietly watches Maximus from a distance when Aurelius approaches her and tells her that had she been born a boy, she would have made an excellent Caesar because she possesses the qualities he taught her to have. When she asks why he has called for her, Aurelius says that he needs her help with her brother because Commodus has always loved her. The following morning, while Commodus trains with his men, Aurelius summons Maximus to his tent. He explains that during his 25 years as emperor, he has expanded the empire through countless wars, but despite all of those victories, Rome has only enjoyed 4 years of peace. He sadly admits that Rome is no longer what it once was. Maximus responds that he refuses to believe that he and his soldiers have fought for nothing. He says that they fought for their Caesar and for Rome itself, and that Rome remains the light of the world.
I brought the sword. Believe
They fought for you.
Aurelius then tells Maximus that he does not want history to remember him as a tyrant obsessed with war. Before his death, he hopes to restore Rome to what it was always meant to be. He asks Maximus about his home, and Maximus explains that he has not seen it in more than 2 years. He says that he lives with his wife and son in a modest house in the hills above Trujillo, where they grow different crops and where his son enjoys running around with the wild ponies. Aurelius then tells him that before he returns home, he must perform one final service for Rome. He asks Maximus to become Rome's protector and make sure that power is eventually handed back to the people so that corruption can finally come to an end. Maximus refuses right away, but Aurelius tells him that this very reluctance is what makes him the right choice. Maximus argues that he has never even set foot in Rome itself, and believes that such a responsibility should fall to a senator or someone familiar with politics and the workings of the city. Aurelius, however, says that Maximus is different from everyone else because he has remained untouched by political corruption. When Maximus asks about Commodus, Aurelius admits that his son lacks morality and is unworthy of ruling the empire. With affection, he tells Maximus that he is the son he wishes he had, and assures him that Commodus will accept the decision because the army stands behind him. Maximus asks for some time to consider everything, and Aurelius says that he hopes to hear his answer before sunset. After leaving the tent, Maximus runs into Lucilla, who asks him what her father wanted, saying that the emperor clearly favors him. Maximus hides the truth and says that Aurelius only wanted to see him one last time before he returned home. Lucilla immediately points out that he has never been good at lying. Maximus tells her that he was saddened to hear about the death of her husband and asks about her son. Lucilla says that her son is named Lucius and that he is 8 years old. Maximus smiles and mentions that his own son is the same age. She then asks him whether he intends to serve Commodus in the same way he served her father, and Maximus answers that his loyalty has always been to Rome.
Maximus, stop. Commodus expects that my father will announce his succession, but
I will always serve Rome.
While Maximus is inside his tent speaking with his servant and friend Cicero, Commodus goes to see his father. Aurelius reveals that authority will pass to Maximus, who will hold it temporarily until the Senate is restored and Rome becomes a republic once again. The news leaves Commodus devastated and furious. Overcome with emotion, he asks his father why he hates him, despite everything he has done to earn his approval.
But none of my virtues won your list. I searched the faces of the gods.
Aurelius quietly replies that this failure is his own burden as a father and embraces his son. But in that moment, Commodus suddenly wraps his arms around him and suffocates him to death. Later, a soldier wakes Maximus and tells him that the emperor wishes to see him. When he arrives, he instead finds Commodus and Lucilla standing beside Aurelius's bed. Commodus announces that the emperor has passed away peacefully in his sleep. He then extends his hand to Maximus and asks for his support as the new ruler, warning him that he will only make the offer once. Maximus refuses immediately and storms back to his tent. Meanwhile, Lucilla slaps her brother in anger, but eventually she takes his hand and accepts him as the new emperor. Back in his tent, Maximus orders Cicero to wake the senators, but before they can leave, Quintus, who fought alongside him throughout the war, enters with soldiers. Maximus tells him that Aurelius has been murdered, but Quintus insists that the emperor died naturally.
The emperor has been slain. Promise me that you will look after my family.
Family will meet you in the afterlife.
He then orders his men to take Maximus away and execute him after riding through the night. As they leave, Maximus asks Quintus to promise that he will look after his wife and son. Quintus coldly replies that Maximus will soon be reunited with them in the afterlife. At dawn, deep inside the forest, the soldiers prepare to carry out the execution. But just before they can kill him, Maximus suddenly fights back. Despite being outnumbered and suffering injuries during the struggle, he manages to kill all of the men sent to execute him.
Praetorian!
Wounded and exhausted, he immediately mounts a horse and begins making his way back home. As Maximus struggles to stay conscious because of his injuries, soldiers loyal to Commodus reach his home before him. They murder his wife and son and burn down everything he owns. When Maximus finally arrives, he discovers the ruins of his home, his destroyed fields, and the lifeless bodies of his family. Broken by grief, he buries them with his own hands and then collapses beside their graves, ready to embrace death himself. However, before death can take him, someone finds him and carries him away, where he is eventually sold into slavery. A few days later, Maximus regains consciousness and discovers that he is lying inside a cage mounted on a carriage that is crossing the desert. A fellow slave named Juba tends to his wounds and tells him not to give up on life just yet because dead slaves are only thrown to the lions and the beasts are considered more valuable. Eventually, they reach the province of Zucabar, where a slave trader sells Maximus, Juba, and several others to a man named Proximo, who trains gladiators for combat.
Not a chance. Come and see them.
That's 5,000 for an opening.
After bringing them to his estate, Proximo bluntly tells them that they will soon be fighting and dying in the arena, and that this place will most likely become their final destination. As the new slaves begin practicing and showing off their abilities, Maximus refuses to take part seriously and allows a German slave named Hagen to strike him again and again during training. Once the session ends, Maximus tries to scrape away the branding on his arm when Juba approaches him and asks why he refuses to fight. Juba reminds him that if they wish to stay alive, they have no choice but to fight. Hagen then speaks up and says that a gladiator has to kill hundreds of men before earning his freedom, adding that this is exactly what he plans to do.
We'll have to fight. And 100 more. But I can.
The following day, they are brought to a local arena where Proximo's friends place bets on whether Maximus and Juba will survive. With the crowd roaring all around them, the slaves enter the arena and the fight begins. Chained together, Maximus and Juba work surprisingly well as a team and manage to survive the battle. Hagen also proves himself and stays alive. Meanwhile, Commodus and Lucilla return to Rome and are welcomed by the senators. Once the formalities are over, Senator Gracchus, who does not approve of Commodus as emperor, begins talking about the issues troubling the citizens. Commodus cuts him off and says that he already knows what the people need. Gracchus continues questioning him, which quickly irritates Commodus, but Lucilla steps in and says that the emperor is tired and will address these matters later. Afterward, Commodus declares that Rome has no need for senators and that listening to them is pointless. Lucilla reminds him that the Senate has always existed and is an essential part of Rome. Commodus simply replies that he intends to give the people a new vision of Rome and that they will love him for it.
There's always been a Senate. Greatness is a vision.
Exactly.
The next day, Gaius informs Gracchus that Commodus has announced 150 days of games at the Colosseum. Gracchus remarks that the decision is clever because Romans adore spectacles and that the Colosseum means much more to the common people than the Senate ever could. Back in Zucabar, Maximus has now built a reputation by winning numerous fights. Proximo advises him to stop killing opponents too quickly and to learn how to entertain the crowd instead. When Maximus enters the arena to loud cheers, he once again defeats every opponent with ease. Afterwards, he hurls his sword toward the seats occupied by Proximo and the nobles and angrily asks the audience whether they are not entertained. The crowd erupts with excitement and soon begins chanting his name.
Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
After the battle, Proximo informs him that the new emperor has organized games in honor of Marcus Aurelius, which he finds ironic because Aurelius himself outlawed them 5 years earlier. Proximo then reveals that he was once a gladiator as well and that he earned his freedom in the Colosseum when Marcus Aurelius personally handed him a wooden sword. He explains that he gained his freedom not merely because he killed men, but because the people loved watching him. Hearing this, Maximus says that he wants to go to Rome and fight before the emperor himself and promises that he will learn how to win over the crowd. Impressed by his determination, Proximo agrees to train him and promises to take him to Rome. When they finally arrive, Maximus and the rest of the gladiators stand in awe of the sheer size and magnificence of the Colosseum.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Win the crowd.
I didn't know men could build such.
Back at the palace, Lucilla becomes uneasy when she sees Commodus standing beside young Lucius's bed. Commodus appears restless and disturbed, and as she gives him a tonic, he starts talking about abolishing the Senate entirely. When she tells him that he needs rest, he asks her to stay with him through the night, but she refuses and walks away. Later that evening, Lucilla secretly meets with Gracchus and Gaius and reveals that Commodus has started arresting scholars and intellectuals. Gaius admits that he fears the Praetorian Guard, which is completely loyal to the emperor. Gracchus explains that the Senate itself has become infested with spies working for Commodus under the leadership of Falco.
He's going to dissolve the Senate.
Until we can neutralize the Praetorians.
When Gaius wonders how Commodus is paying for the games without imposing new taxes, Lucilla reveals that he is selling Rome's grain reserves, a decision that could leave the city starving within 2 years. Terrified for both herself and her son Lucius, who is the heir to the throne, she breaks down and says that Commodus must die. Gracchus and Gaius agree that as long as the Praetorian Guard protects him, they have no choice but to wait for the right opportunity. The following day, young Lucius comes to watch the arrival of the new gladiators and excitedly tells Maximus that he has heard many stories about him and promises to cheer for him during the games. As soon as Maximus hears the boy's name, he realizes that this is Lucilla's son. Nearby, Proximo gets into an argument with Cassius, the man responsible for organizing the games, demanding more money for his fighters. Cassius, however, dismisses him arrogantly and refuses to increase the payment. Soon afterward, the gladiators march into the arena and salute Commodus before the battle is announced. Before the battle begins, Maximus tells the gladiators that they have a better chance of surviving if they fight together. When the gates open, enemy chariots surround them. At first, they struggle, but Maximus takes command, saves Hagen, and leads the men to victory. Impressed,
But shouldn't the barbarians lose the Battle of Carthage?
Commodus asks Cassius about the mysterious fighter and learns that he is known as the Spaniard. As the gladiators are leaving, Praetorians stop them, and Commodus comes down with Lucius to ask Maximus his name. Maximus replies that he is only a gladiator and turns away. Furious, Commodus orders him to remove his helmet. Maximus reveals himself before the crowd, leaving Commodus, Quintus, and Lucilla stunned.
Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance.
Although the guards are ready to kill him, the crowd demands that he be spared, forcing Commodus to let him live. Later, the gladiators celebrate while Commodus returns to the palace and destroys his father's statue in anger. He questions Lucilla about Maximus, but she denies knowing anything and lies when he asks how she felt seeing him again. That night, Lucilla secretly visits Maximus and learns that Commodus murdered his wife and son. She tells him that many senators oppose Commodus and believe Maximus can help overthrow him. Reminding him that he once fought for Rome and her father, she asks him to meet one of their allies, but Maximus bitterly says that he is only a slave and tells her to leave. The following day, Commodus asks Quintus whether he knew that Maximus was alive. When Quintus denies it, Commodus orders the execution of the soldiers who falsely reported his death. Meanwhile, Hagen asks Maximus if he truly commanded the Roman army and won great battles. Later, when Maximus receives his meal, Hagen tastes it first to make sure it has not been poisoned.
You have a great name.
General!
Inside the Colosseum, Senator Falco takes his seat alongside Gracchus and Gaius. As the spectators cheer, servants of the emperor begin throwing bread into the crowd to entertain them even further. Soon, Commodus arrives with Lucilla at his side. Hidden among the spectators, Cicero quietly watches everything without drawing attention to himself. Cassius then announces the main event, which will feature the gladiators against the legendary Tigress of Gaul, the undefeated champion of the Colosseum. Meanwhile, Proximo informs Maximus about the fearsome opponent awaiting him. Looking around at the cheering masses and the spectacle surrounding them, Maximus comments that this is not the Rome Marcus Aurelius dreamed of. Proximo simply reminds him that Aurelius is gone and that the dead no longer shape the world of the living. As Maximus enters the arena, the crowd erupts in cheers. Seeing how much the people admire him, Commodus remarks that they love the Spaniard, but Lucilla tries to reassure him by saying that the public will forget about Maximus within a month. Commodus calmly replies that they will forget him much sooner because he has already made plans. Just as the fight begins, a massive tiger is released into the arena, attached to a long chain and sent straight at Maximus. While he is busy fighting Tigress of Gaul, another tiger is unleashed. Soon, a third beast joins the attack and almost catches him off guard, but Maximus manages to kill it and eventually defeats Tigress, leaving him wounded and unable to continue. The crowd roars for blood and demands that Tigress be finished off. Commodus signals for the execution, but Maximus tosses away his weapon and spares his opponent. The people immediately begin chanting, calling him Maximus the Merciful. At that moment, Praetorian guards surround him as Commodus walks into the arena and asks why he refuses to die. Maximus coldly answers that he will die only after taking one more life. Commodus tells him to do it immediately and even mentions his murdered wife and son in an attempt to provoke him, but Maximus controls himself and walks away. As he makes his way through the crowd, Cicero approaches him and quietly hands him the small figures that remind him of his family. Maximus tells him to inform his men that their general is alive and that they must be prepared. Back in the palace, Commodus grows even more restless after the spectacle. When Falco suggests having Maximus killed, Commodus refuses, saying that he has no intention of turning him into a martyr. He reveals that he deliberately informed the Senate about selling Rome's grain reserves to finance the games, yet no one opposed him. Falco advises him to be patient and secretly keep every senator under surveillance.
Let our enemies come to us. Very unusual method of attracting its prey.
Outside the room, Lucilla overhears everything. The next morning, Cicero meets Maximus and informs him that the army has remained at Ostia since the previous winter and is ready to answer their general's call. Maximus gives him instructions and asks him to deliver a message. Later, Cicero secretly contacts Lucilla at the market and tells her that Maximus is willing to meet the senator. When Lucilla and Gracchus finally speak with him, Maximus asks Gracchus to buy his freedom and help him leave Rome. He explains that he intends to return with his army and kill Commodus. Shocked by the idea, Gracchus refuses and points out that no army has marched into Rome for a century, and that replacing one ruler with another would change nothing. Maximus assures him that after killing Commodus, he will surrender power to the Senate, because that was Marcus Aurelius's final wish. Gracchus struggles to believe that a man could conquer Rome and willingly give it away, but Maximus firmly insists that he will. As Gracchus sends a servant with the money, Proximo notices suspicious eyes watching them. He warns Maximus that the emperor already knows too much and that the plan is dangerous. Maximus promises to repay him one day, but Proximo jokes that perhaps he should keep Commodus alive because the games are making him wealthy. Before leaving, Maximus reminds him that Commodus murdered the very man who once granted him freedom. Soon afterward, Praetorian guards arrest Gracchus. At the palace, Commodus tells Lucilla that he intends to make the Senate suffer, beginning with Gracchus. He then forces himself upon her, leaving her shaken and terrified before she finally walks away. That night, Proximo tells Maximus that he still has influential friends. Lucilla then arrives and warns him that Gracchus has been arrested and that he must escape immediately. She admits that Commodus despises him because both she and Marcus Aurelius loved Maximus more than they loved him. Back at the palace, Commodus wakes up and finds Lucius playing with toy swords. When he asks what he is doing, the boy happily says that he is pretending to be Maximus, the savior of Rome. Commodus embraces him and asks who taught him that. When Lucilla enters and sees them together, she becomes uneasy. Commodus starts telling Lucius a story about an emperor betrayed by those closest to him, and at that moment, Lucilla realizes that her brother knows everything.
Or I shall strike down those dearest to you.
I don't know, Uncle.
Later that night, Commodus's men murder Gaius and several senators loyal to Gracchus. At the same time, Praetorians arrive at Proximo's school and demand that the gates be opened. Proximo hands Maximus the key and tells him that everything is prepared. Once the soldiers storm inside, the gladiators fight to buy Maximus time. During the chaos, Hagen and many others lose their lives, while Proximo is killed inside his room. Maximus almost reaches Cicero, but before they can escape, Cicero is murdered and Maximus is finally captured. The following day, Falco informs Commodus that the situation has been dealt with. Commodus then warns Lucilla that Lucius will remain with him from now on. He threatens to kill the boy if she ever betrays him again. He also demands that she bear him a pure blood heir so that his bloodline can rule Rome for 1,000 years. Inside the Colosseum, the crowd once again cheers for Maximus. Commodus approaches him and announces that he himself will fight him in the arena to bring their story to an end. Before the battle, however, Commodus secretly stabs Maximus and orders Quintus to conceal the wound beneath his armor before sending him out. Once the duel begins, Maximus struggles because of his injury and suffers several blows. Despite his weakness, he slowly gains the advantage and eventually knocks the weapon out of Commodus's hand. Panicking, Commodus calls for Quintus to hand him a sword, but Quintus refuses and orders the guards not to arm the emperor. Although he is exhausted and close to death, Maximus still finds the strength to kill Commodus. Using his remaining strength, he orders Quintus to free the gladiators and restore Gracchus to power. After giving his final commands, he collapses. Lucilla rushes to him, and Maximus assures her that Lucius is safe. He then closes his eyes and sees himself returning home, reunited with his wife and son. In the end, Gracchus with some other men carry Maximus's body out of the Colosseum. Juba then buries the small figures of Maximus's family in the ground and quietly says that one day he will meet his friend again.